What's up, everyone? We are live right now in the CannaBuzz community, and if you're watching us right now on YouTube, please like and subscribe to our channel. We've got a great interview for you today. We are talking to Jinxproof. Jinx, he's a legendary breeder in the scene, and today we're going to be talking about his journeys in the glass scene. So I know JR has a lot of really great questions for us today, where we're going to be talking to Jinx about all sorts of things and adventures that he's been up to over the years. But before we get into that, I have a few things that I need to get to first. First, I need to give a shout out to our CannaBuzz community. We've got folks watching in our live stream, on our live chat right now, so they can respond to the live interview and give us questions and things like that. And then at the end of the interview, we give away stuff to our viewers. So join our community, search CannaBuzz in the App Store, and you can use the code GROWERSLOVE for 50% off your first month. And we really appreciate your support. It helps us keep going. And then also, JR, we'd like to give a shout out to our friend TikiMadMan over at TikiSeeds.com. And he also lets us know about the latest and greatest and what he's up to. Were there any updates from him, JR?
Yeah, they're still running the power pack where you get the BOGO, buy one, get one. And it's the Raver, which is the Detroit Runts by Sherbert Ripple. And then the other is the Tiki Sugar, which is a Detroit Runts by Lemon Cherry Zerbert. And
Nice.
also Tiki is still doing his summer 20% off sale. So you get 20% off of all the gear and seeds available at TikiSeeds.com.
Cool. Well, thanks to Tiki for his support and also to our friends at Grove Bags. We'll get to them later on in the show. But let's get into this interview. JR, you're going to kick us off with the intro for our special guest today. I thought you could do us the honors.
Thanks. I'm really excited about this because, to be honest with you, my relationship with Jinx started out very much as a fanboy. I waited by his booth at the Portland, I think Hempstock it was, and I just waited and waited so that I could get a chance to talk to this man. So to have him in the chair and actually have him on my show is, I'm really glad. It's a moment that I'm really proud of. And thanks, Jinx, for coming on. But for the intro, I mean, man needs very little introduction. He's been a grower and a breeder for a while, a very long while. He started his roots with the TGA family. He's most known for his work with the 9-pound hammer, but has a lot of amazing other crosses that he's done and some sativa work that a lot of people, I think, sleep on as well. He's an advocate for autism and our veterans, a very powerful community activist. And something we're going to get into, and you touched on, is his relationship as a glass blower into the glass community. He's been a part of the glass community for a very long time. And here at CannaBuzz, we like to kind of touch on every aspect of our community and our industry. So it's good to have him on. I mean, someone who knows a lot about it. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Jinx.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate you guys.
Good to have you on, man. Good to have you on. So, we always start everyone out with how did you fall in love with the plant, and how's it got your journey to where you are today?
Well, I mean, as far as, sorry, I'm turning some stuff down here. My headphones are hella loud. As far as falling in love, like my parents were kind of old school. Like my pops was a biker and my mom was a hippie. So it was always kind of around, you know what I mean? We weren't allowed to smoke as little kids or nothing like that, but we snuck out and checked it out. And by 12 I had already smoked some weed, and not every day, but had tried it and stuff like that. And it's obviously as you get older and the teen years and stuff, you actually meet people who are selling it or stuff. So that was my first intro to it, so to speak, and I loved it right away. And like I say, our family and our family's friends, it was no big deal because we kind of grew up around it. You know what I mean? My dad actually grew weed when I was a little kid. I lost the photo, but we got this photo, and it's a 12-foot fence, and like 3 feet above the fence, you can see a pot plant. And it's funny because it's a picture of my oldest brother, because you couldn't just take a picture like that. You know what I mean? So it's a picture of my oldest brother standing in front of a fence. But if you look at the top of the picture, there's like a big crown of a giant weed plant that my dad had grown behind a fence in Sacramento outside. So, you know, it's always been part of our family. You know, my mom was definitely a big stoner and, you know, stuff like that. So it just kind of came naturally, I suppose, you know, just kind of, you know.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, I think back then people thought, you know, in the Northwest that, you know, sometimes it was really, you know, like you're going to get in a lot of trouble. And other times it was just like people very nonchalant. I mean, people back in the late 70s and early 80s, there was a lot of chronic around in this area in the Northwest. And I don't think people really realize that as
Mhm.
much.
Yeah,
But
I'm not actually from Seattle. People think that, but I was born in Sacramento and lived in California till like my mom got divorced. Me and my dad moved to Seattle, and I think I was in fourth grade.
Okay.
So, you know, it was kind of like that. And then you get spoiled with the weed up here because not many people grow weed outside in Seattle. So it's that chronic indoor, you know.
yeah, always, huh?
Yeah. So, but
So we're gonna dive into TGA and the history there. It's such a legendary and impactful group of growers. But let's talk about Super Soil. Who got you into, or who turned you on to Super Soil?
definitely Subcool. I'd tell you the truth, I'd never even really heard of it before. You know, I'd always used pretty good organic dirt, but we were definitely feeding salt newts. And like back in the day, it wasn't like now where you walk into a store and you don't even know what to pick. You know what I mean? Because there's so many brands. When I first started, you know, fuck, 30 years ago or whatever it was, if you went into a grow store here, there was two kinds. There was Eco Enterprises and there was General Hydroponics. You know what I mean? So it wasn't
Yeah.
it was pretty simple, really. There wasn't all these extra nutrients. It was like part A, part B, bloom or growth. You know, people would use
Right.
the Super Thrive was the big additive. You know, which some people swear is snake oil, some people swear by it, you know. So um by the time I met Sub, that had changed a lot. There was more companies out and more, you know, things you could buy like CalMag or Sugar or, you know, whatever, stuff like that. And so once I became friends with Sub and working with him, he told me about Super Soil and he sent me the recipe. He had the old school Vic High recipe that he had learned from. And I went in my backyard and I mixed a bunch of it up and I didn't really know much about it. And I went out there 2 weeks later and it was covered in mold,
Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
actually took a shovel and I scooped the top of one shovelful off and threw it in the bushes. Cause I was like,
Yeah.
what? This looks terrible. It's all rotten
Yeah.
and moldy. But then I was like, you know what? I better go call Sub. And so I asked him about it. And like a lot of times you make super soil, it'll have that webbing, like it's mildew and not mildew, but mold that's kind of webbing all over. But this was like mold on bread. I mean,
Okay.
like it was moldy. And he was like, dude, that's the bomb. Like if you got it to mold like that, it's super active, it's super alive. You know what I mean? So he's like, get out there and stir that shit up. Like get that, you know, that mold and stuff all mixed out through the whole batch. I had a little kiddie pool I made it in. You know
Okay.
what I
Yeah,
mean?
I
So
saw that video.
yeah, that was substantially after actually. This was
Oh,
way
okay.
before that, a different house even. But I was this close to scraping all that mold off the top of that dirt and chucking it in the bushes because I really didn't know anything about it. But like I say, I decided to go call Sub and see what was up, you know, and then man, it was bomb. You know what I mean? Like I grew out some plants and I did one crazy train from Sub. And in a small bedroom, this one plant had 13 ounces on it, which
Wow.
was incredible. Like when I was a kid, when we grew indoors, we usually shot for about 3 ounces. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Off a decent sized plant, but this it was, I mean, just donkeys everywhere. You know what I mean? And, you know, since then I've never returned back. I've been a super soil guy ever since. You know, things have changed. I've kind of figured out some stuff on my own that Sub didn't do. Which is kind of
Well, I
part
think
of
it's
the journey.
Yeah,
I
totally.
think it's I think it's interesting because you know that Coots mix kind of is very similar in that and he, you know, kind of comes from this West Coast region, and a lot of those older dudes. So I'm wondering, did Sub ever tell you, like, you know, any like how he learned it and what the story behind Vic High is?
Not really, tell you the truth. I mean, I had a basic knowledge of Vic High. I didn't know a ton about him. Like, I mean, when I was young, there wasn't the internet or anything. Like, most shit you learned was either from somebody you knew, or if you
Yeah,
bought a cannabis book, or sometimes
yeah,
High Times magazine or something like that. And in Seattle, it was totally illegal. So, like, your best friend would be growing weed, he wouldn't admit it to you. You know,
yeah.
so you couldn't really ask him questions because he ain't going to admit that he grows weed. Even though we both know each other grows weed, you know what I mean? It was just, you didn't do it. You got in trouble
Yeah,
back then, And
yeah,
I mean, I had a girlfriend for 2 years before I admitted to her that I grew weed. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's just because a lot of dudes got busted because they break up with their girlfriend,
yep.
and then their girlfriend's new
So,
boyfriend would be a hater. You know what I
oh,
mean? And snitch on you or
right.
something. I mean, I heard all those stories, so it wasn't worth the risk. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
like say back then, now it's no big deal, but back then you got in trouble. You might even go to prison over some weed. Not just
Yeah.
jail, but and it was tough. We didn't have carbon filters or any of that shit, so we actually used to seek out strains that did not stink.
yeah.
You know what I
That's a
mean? Like now you
problem.
want the stinkiest, bombest shit
Right,
you can, but we actually, like,
right.
if somebody had a bomb strain that didn't smell your whole room up or whatever,
Yeah,
you'd be trying to get it. You know what I mean? Because, you know, I mean, I got the true Northern Lights when I was a kid. I mean, it was the real Northern Lights. The shit finished up in 48 days, blah, blah, blah. But you'd be 3 blocks from your house driving home, be like, oh
yeah,
shit,
huh?
that's me.
Yeah,
That is me. Like,
yeah,
apparently, I always had cool neighbors because nobody ever made a fuss out of it. But
yeah.
we do stupid shit like you take a bucket, fill it full of pine sol, put a fish bubbler in it, and then hang it by your out fan. Your
Yeah.
so you come home and your front yard will basically smell like weed and pine sol. It's better than just straight weed, you know what I mean? So
That's
it kind
hilarious.
of it made you feel better. Like, at least I'm trying, you know what I mean? Like, and first time I saw a carbon filter, I was just like, what the hell is that thing? You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, you could probably talk about some of those older, like roadkill skunks and some of those super. I mean, we would never, like, we would get it in high school. We'd score grams. And if our guy had that shit, we would literally have to hide it outside. We couldn't bring it in our lockers or on our
Oh
bodies.
yeah. Yeah.
It would be a fucking instant bust.
Yeah.
So,
Same thing. We had a really dominant cat piss going around Washington for quite
yeah,
some time
yep,
too.
yep,
And
I
same
got
thing,
that.
like, we used to own a little store and we had this kid that would come sell it to us. And he'd be 2 blocks away and be like, oh, he's on his way. You know what I mean? And it was the real cat piss. I mean, it just, you open up a gram bag and just permeate the whole house. You know what I mean? So, but I wasn't trying to grow that shit.
Right.
So, kind of funny. And we didn't
So,
really have a lot of names for strains back then. Like,
Yeah.
no, huh?
most of the shit we grew did not have names aside from um Northern Lights. That was the only strain I grew that actually had a real name that people recognize. And
Yeah,
like, well,
Yeah.
nowadays you have to have a name of a strain. And people are like, what the
yeah.
hell is that? You know what I mean? So it wasn't like that. It was just what you could get. And like I said, we literally sought out strains that didn't stink. So it's kind
That
of
And
makes
funny.
back in
sense.
the day, I remember back in the day, it would be like, oh, there's that pork chop bud, or oh, there's that cantaloupe bud. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? It didn't really have a specific like name.
Mm-hmm.
You just described it based on what you thought it smelled and kind of tasted like for a lot of
We
it,
didn't
you
even
know?
do that. Like, aside from Northern Lights and Alaska Thunderfuck, and then your old ass stuff like Colombian Gold or Panama Red, like, it didn't have names. And if you were selling it, nobody even asked you. The only thing they would ask you is like, they wouldn't even ask you sativa indica. They only question they'd be like, bro, is it chronic?
Yeah.
Is it chronic? Is it bomb? That's all that, and you could always tell by somebody's answer, like, yeah, it's pretty chronic, which means it's not chronic. you know, and the whole name thing for my generation came later. You know what I mean? Aside from, like, say, the real old strains like Colombian Gold and Panama Red, which most people actually look down on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because That was like brickweed.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
Like
And
on the
full of
beach, at the
seeds and red
beach.
hairs.
Yeah, I didn't see much brickweed ever. I don't even think I could probably count on my hands how many times I've seen brickweed
Oh
before.
God. Well, I'm older than you guys. I'm 55, so I've seen plenty of it. And you get this chunk in a bag, and it'd take you a long time for one just to break it up, but then get all the seeds and stems out of it. They just
Yeah.
crushed it as it was, you know what I mean? But when you're young, you take what you can get, because it wasn't like some adult was going to sell some 12-year-old weed,
Right.
So
Yeah.
you did what you could, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I remember me and my brother one time were so sick of it, we just rolled the joint, and it was like rolling little pieces of wood. Like we got sick of breaking it up. We're like, we're gonna do this after we smoke. And that thing was full of seeds. It was like smoking a firework. It was like, pow,
Oh,
Right.
pow, pow. But we were kids. We didn't care. We got stoned hella easy. And a couple puffs. And, so
That's
good.
funny.
silly shit. These younger kids nowadays, they don't know how good they got it.
Oh yeah. So talking about TGA, can you tell us the story about TGA breaking into the Washington medical market?
Well, yeah, it was pretty much me that broke it in there, tell you the truth. I didn't tell you the truth, I didn't even know who TGA was. Like I say, stuff was so private and stuff. You didn't, there wasn't a lot of talk and chatter, but when weed became medical, you could just go to these little places like, oh, my back hurts, and then they'd give you a medical card. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when I went to my buddy showed up one day and he had one of their menus, and it had the Ace of Spades and God, I can't even think of it, but it was another strain that was bred to black cherry soda, but the buds were pink, not purple, like they were straight pink, So I was like, damn, I need some of that. So I went out and tried to find it. When I went to his website, it said that they were available in Washington, and supposedly he had a distributor here. But I searched all over. I've probably maybe even told you guys this story before. I found one co-op in Washington had TGA seeds. So I call them up and they're like, we don't discuss strains on the phone. You have to come here. And it was in Tacoma, which is pretty far from where I live. So I drove all the way out to Tacoma. I get there, they've got one pack of seeds. And all due respect to Sub, but it's like the one pack I don't want. Kaboom. I'm still not a fan of it. You know what I mean? Begrudgingly, I buy it, just cause. And then I drive all the way home in rush hour traffic. So this has consumed my whole day to spend $80 on a pack of seeds I don't want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I actually came home and I went to his website, and there was an email thing, and I wrote him my story. Like, bro, it says you got a distributor here. You clearly don't. You know what I mean? And this was a complete waste of my day, blah, blah, blah. And I said, if you ever want a real estate distributor, you shoot me a call and you let me know, because I get shit done. That's the kind of guy I am. And so like 5 minutes later, my phone rings. Hey dude, it's Sub Cool. Because whenever he's excited, his southern accent would come out.
Right.
Yeah. So he kind of, hey dude. And he's like, are you serious? I was like, bro, I'm serious like a heart attack. You know what I mean? And he's like, do you have any idea how many emails I get every day? He's like, because this was back when he was huge and doing all the forums and all this. And so you get tons of people asking questions, blah, blah, blah. He's like, I can't possibly read them all. It's hundreds and hundreds every day. And he's like, but I was going through the email, and the title of one of them said, Sub Cool sucks in Seattle, which was my email.
Yeah, right.
He's like, I couldn't help but open that up and see what the hell it said. So then he called me, and he was like, I don't just send my seeds to people. You buy them from me wholesale, and then you go re-wholesale them, or retail them.
Yeah.
So, and to get in was a chunk. It was about 5 G's, and at the time we were kind of struggling. I was like, well, I crop in 2 weeks. I'll send you 5 G's then. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I did, and we got to start our relationship on trust, because he mailed me my seeds and they never showed up. And I'm just like, bro, like, you know, I'm not
What the
trying to rip
fuck?
you off, but they have never showed up. It's
Yeah.
been plenty of time. I should have gotten them. You know what I mean?
Right.
And he's like, well, you know, I'm just going to go out on a limb. You seem like an okay dude, because we've been talking on the phone and getting to know each other, you know. And he sent me another box of my order. And then I go out to my mailbox. It's funny because it was an old school mailbox and they stuffed the box in there and I couldn't get it out. So I literally had to take a hammer and beat the side off of my mailbox to get the box out, you know. So I get it out and I'm opening it, I'm going through it. Like that day, my neighbor comes to the front porch and he's like, hey man, I got a package that I believe is yours. And it was it went to the neighbor instead of me. And for some reason he'd been sitting on it for a while, or it showed up late. I don't know. So then I called Sub and I was like, hey man, I got that second package. Do you want me to send it back to you? Do you want me to just work it off and then send you the money, you know, once I've sold it? And he's like, dude, just work it off. You know what I mean? And but because of that, I mean, I could have kept that box. He never would have known, you know. He's like, but because of this, man, like it's increased our business relationship big time, you know, because you know, he had been burned plenty times before through, you know, just stupid shit, you know, like any business, you know. So it was actually kind of cool because you know, it gave him a lot of trust in me and stuff like
That's
that.
really
And it
cool.
also boosted our level of friendship too, you know. So but I went out my first day, I went to like every co-op that was around me, and they all knew who Subcool was. So, you know, I was doing great. Like I came home and I took a picture of a stack of money, you know, and I was like, bro, I told you, you know what I mean? I mean, it wasn't like I made that much money because I also spent that much money. You know what I mean? The markup wasn't great, but it was, you know, something else for me to do aside from blowing glass. And, you know, Rose had a regular job and, you know, shit we were doing. So, I mean, basically, you know, so basically I got a job with Subcool telling me sucks. But you know,
That's really cool, Jinx. I mean, I think Subcool, the one thing you can say about him is he put a lot of people on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A lot of us, and his willingness to give out free knowledge is the reason why I started my channel in 2015.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to be able to pass on anything that I had gained from that whole experience. And you know, that willingness to give back to the community is something I think that you've also spurred on as well.
What's up, everyone? We're going to get right back to the interview in just a second, but first I need to give a shout out to one of our sponsors, Terploc, the makers of Grove bags. This is a Grove bag right here. This is a 1/4 pound. You can store a whole 1/4 pound of weed that's been dried first. You dry it in your tent or something like that. Dry it for about 10 to 14 days, and then you throw it in a Grove bag. So you can get rid of your jars, put it in a Grove bag, you seal it up, and you don't have to worry about burping or anything like that. The bag takes care of the moisture release, and it makes sure that it keeps everything at a consistent humidity level. So check out Grove Bags. Go to grovebags.com. Use your code CannaBuzz for 7% off. Let them know that you came from the CannaBuzz podcast, and score yourself some bags and cure your weed to perfection. Let's get back to the interview.
Well, I want to transition into your artistry as a glass artist. A lot of people know you as a breeder, but people don't really know how extensive your history in glass is. Can you tell us when you got introduced to glass and what really made you? I mean, because blowing glass is not exactly the easiest thing to jump into. So can you kind of talk about how you fell in love with glass and what made you jump off?
Yeah, well, actually, me and my best friend D Range, you see him on my Instagram sometime. We opened up a new we had a tattoo shop downtown Seattle, and we had a massive earthquake in Seattle and it destroyed our tattoo shop. So we moved to a little town we grew up in called Ballard. It's a little Norwegian town here in Seattle. And we opened a new tattoo shop, but the tattoo shop was too big. So we rented the second half of the tattoo shop to a head shop called the Gob Shop. And the Gob Shop was like the Northwest oldest head shop, like the first head shop, you know, like, and they moved in, somebody had bought it. So they moved out of their building and started renting the second half of our building, which was kind of cool because if you went to the head shop, you had to walk through our tattoo shop, which is obviously, you know, most people going to a head shop are pretty down for tattoos. So we kind of thrived off each other. But the guy that bought it was doing a shitty job and he ended up abandoning it. It's like just walked one day, you know what I mean? And we didn't use companies. The gob shop didn't use companies because we have so many glass blowers here in Seattle. So somebody come in your store and you could always tell they're a glass blower because they'd be carrying a gun case, whether it was like a gun case or a rifle case, because they're padded, you know, and camera
Yeah.
cases are too expensive. So you'd always know
Yeah.
like, oh, here's a new glass blower, you know. So I was like, fuck it, we got to pay rent on the second half of the building. You know, there's gob shop signs already hanging out, which is Seattle's oldest head shop. So I just started filling up the store, and then we hired a girl to, you know, to be our cashier and stuff like that, and you know, and then you know, I was the main buyer, so I got to started getting to know glass blowers. You know, I never really had any glass blower friends, you know what I mean? But because of this, I'd see these guys, and you know, you end up chatting after you do your business, and you know, become friends. And one day, dude was like, "Hey, man, why don't you come over to my studio and check it out?" You know what I mean? And went over there, and me and Derange both, and he hooked us up with, like, when you blow hand pipes, you take a little blow tube and you hook a bigger piece of glass to the end, like a bigger tube. You start melting that down, and then you do all this stuff, and, you know, and that's how you make a hand pipe. So he kind of walked us through it, and you know, we each made little hand pipes. It was really cool, you know what I mean? It wasn't something that instantly it was like, you know what, I'm going to do this, you know what I mean? Because glass blowing, like I said, is not easy. It can be expensive to get started, you know, and it's very hush hush. Like, why am I going to teach you my job? You know what I mean? Like, you know,
Yeah.
glass blowers don't even really want apprentices. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, now I'm just creating my own competition, and it's hard enough because we have so many glass blowers. So then I had another glass blower come into my store, and he made bongs. And when you make bongs, it's on a lathe, a glass lathe. It's totally different compared to hand pipes, which you're, like say, doing on the tube. It's actually called lamp work. And then I was at his studio, and I saw the lathe, and he had somebody working it. This dude was actually from the Chong factory, and I saw him working it, and something about it, I was just like, you know what? That is something I can do. And I actually had an old 1948 Harley Davidson Panhead that me and Dwayne had built, and it was worth some money. So I sold it, and I bought a lathe, because lathes are not cheap. They start at $14,000. And this was, you know, 20 something years ago, you know. So I bought a lathe, a torch, my goggles, and you know, I just started messing around the lathe. I taught myself. You know, I'd seen a couple people work the lathe, so I kind of had an inkling, you know what I mean? And you know, I just went there, and yeah, next thing I knew, I was making bongs, and I actually stopped tattooing because I was totally all about it. Me and Rose had opened up a couple of, or head shop on what we call the Ave, which is University Ave. So it's all these little stores by the University of Washington. So it's nothing but college kids. So it's a great place to have a smoke shop. There's mostly like import shops, the Korean shops, the Indian shops just sell crappy imported glass. So we sold you know, my bongs and then local glass, and you know, we were doing pretty good and all that. And yeah, I mean, I would literally get up at like 6 a.m, make a bunch of bongs, and then go open our head shop after that, you know.
Wow, that's wild.
Working like a madman, you know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
But it also allowed me to not work a job, you know, like I was doing my thing. And then yeah, just kind of, you know, came from there. And Rose quit her job so she could run the head shop. You know, I'd come in like a couple hours after it was open with whatever bongs I made that day, and you know, every single bong in the store was made by us. There was no Chinese glass, no company glass, you know, from big companies, you know, full of people getting underpaid and all that shit. So it just kind of went from there, you know.
So talk about what kind of stuff you started did you start expanding out into other types of glass things that we'd make, maybe art or anything like that? Have you made anything like that in glass?
I have, and it's usually for like Christmas presents, or just cause I feel like it, you know, like sometimes I don't want to make a bong all day every day. So sometimes I just make random shit. I made a few glass dildos for some little company.
Oh, wow,
you know,
that's cool.
You know, but it was most of that stuff was just for fun. Like I'd make Rose Christmas tree ornaments, or like say a lot of gifts for Christmas, candle holders or little goblets, or you know, just random stuff, you know.
Yeah.
So, but and it was like I said, it stopped me from just getting totally burnt out on just making bongs. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
you can actually, I have a YouTube channel. I'm never on it, but there is a couple videos on there of me making one of my signature pieces called a couch potato. It's actually a lay down bong with a bunch of big curves in it, kind of like a zong. And then there's a video of me also making a double perk. So it's a Jinxproof, 2 words that you can see it. So like I say, I'm not that
So
active on it.
can you kind of talk about glass culture and just how, like you had mentioned something about, people being underworked and making, cheap glass. Can you kind of talk about glass culture and, what that means?
Mm-hmm. When it first started, it was a lot harder because we didn't have social media. When I started blowing glass, there was no Facebook. I mean, there was a MySpace, but nobody really used it, like in our culture. There was no YouTube, there was no Instagram. So, I mean, it was really hard to get a name because a lot of the younger crowd, they want a name on their glass, like
Yeah.
Jinxproof or Freak, or like I'm not that really into the scene anymore, so I don't know who the badasses are nowadays. You know what I mean? I know the guys from my generation, Dosher, Amber Pellegrini, blah blah blah. So it was actually pretty tough. The culture though, I mean, it's kind of strange because there's a lot of like I've got some friends to this day that I don't know in head shops anymore, but we're still really good friends. I'm always a lot of times I show portal pieces on my page, and he's a badass glass blower, but he's a super cool dude. You know what I mean? Like, if he was here, we're all kicking it, you'd be like, that dude is cool. You know what I mean? Like really down to earth, real modest, And there's another side of glass blowing where it's a lot of these I don't know how to say this without sounding like an asshole, but a lot of rich kids, whose parents bought them everything and sent them to these classes like that. It was just like easy for them. And they're really pretentious. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
They're like
about
almost
their art.
assholes when they come in
Yeah.
your store. And part of me is like, I don't want to buy glass from this dude because he's a dick. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
Like I personally believe like your energy gets all up into what you do. Like
Absolutely.
your plants, your art. So I want art, glass art from somebody who's got good energy and's a cool dude and deserves it. You know what I mean? So, it was kind of hard because a lot of these guys do want the big name guys, and the big name guys are these rich kids who've been allowed to
Yeah.
go to every class or constantly traveling, or compared to dudes who are struggling just to make a living,
Grinding.
no matter how badass they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of a weird industry, so to speak. And then, like China has these people and they're called trend finders. And they come to America and they find stuff that's trendy, whether it be a pair of shoes. And at the time, glass was blowing up, yo. So then all of a sudden, we have this massive invasion of imported glass,
Yeah.
made by
Yeah.
people making a nickel a day, or, you know what I mean? And, we never sold Chinese glass ourselves. It was usually either or. Like you get these like smoke shops, like they'd sell cigarettes and shit. They'd have
Yeah,
a bunch
exactly.
of Chinese glass. They'd also sell meth pipes and crack pipes and boner
Right.
pills
Right.
and all that shit, brass knuckles. So, but a lot of the Seattleites were educated in that. So
Yeah.
I mean, some kids didn't care because I can go get a fat bong for $30, or I can go get one made by an artist for $100. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
they make glass in China too, so their raw product is a lot cheaper. You know what I mean?
Right.
Compared to me going out and buying a case of glass. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. I was going to
it's a
mention
struggle.
there you were talking about the types of glass blowers. You reminded me of there's this glass blowing competition show on Netflix called Blown Away.
Uh-huh.
And there's some glass blowers from the like weed scene that haven't been on the show, which is cool. And yeah, there's most of them seem pretty laid back, but there's a couple people that are really pretentious because they're on the like really artsy fartsy end of glass blowing and stuff like that. So
Well,
anyways, just thought I'd throw that out there for if
that
people are looking for
show
glass shows.
that show is what's called soft glass. Like when you
Yeah.
see them dip into that big vat and take out a blob of hot glass and start blowing it, that's soft glass. And that's for art.
Yeah.
Like big vases or chandeliers or sculptures. They call it soft glass because it stays malleable for a long time. Like you can bend it and like for
Yeah,
a
yeah.
long time where you don't want a soft glass pipe. They do make them, but I mean, like if you even drop it like even on your desk, it's shattering.
Oh yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
healthy because of all the stuff in it. We use
Right.
what's called borosilicate, which is more commonly known as Pyrex. Pyrex
Yeah.
is not actually a type of glass, it's a brand like Ford or Chevy, you know. So
Right.
and it actually kind of sucks. So we use borosilicate, and it comes either in tubes or in rods. So when you start with that, you're starting with either a hollow tube or a solid rod of glass, not that big blob from out of
Right.
that thing. You know what I mean? So it's totally different, you know. And
Yeah.
it's kind of weird because tons of soft glass blowers hate on pipe makers. Like it's just like pipe makers don't
Too
hate
big
on
to
soft
try.
glass.
Yeah,
Like they
yeah.
think it's cool. Like I would love to try it sometime. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
that's cool.
I think I could do it. But for some reason, those guys like hate on pipe makers, like straight up hate them. You know, it's so silly. It's
tribal.
funny. You know,
Yeah.
so it's kind of
That is kind of funny. So are
Yeah.
you familiar? I mean, speaking of really like popularity train, that the Mothership folks are out of Washington, and they had kind of a huge explosion and were charging outrageous amounts of money for for their Fabergé
Yeah.
eggs. Can you kind of speak on that a little bit if you don't
Well,
mind?
they charge a huge amount of money for anything, is what I've seen. And tell
Yeah.
you the truth, I didn't even know they were from Seattle.
Yeah.
I was always under the impression that they were a pretty big company that had a lot of people that worked for them, not like an independent artist. And they do what's called drops. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And a lot of the younger crowd, especially, they want that name. Like they
Yep.
want to own a Mothership pipe, so they're willing. You know, I'll make the same pipe for $100, bro. And that thing's $1,200. You know what I mean? But the names, like when Roar first came out, people wanted
Yeah.
those Roars so
Oh, they
bad,
did.
and it was just a straight tube, big deal.
I
You
didn't
know what I
like
mean?
them myself. I
I
like
didn't.
bubble. I need something with a deep bubble. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, they made all kinds, you know, but it's really, I mean, you can't hate on them as far as like they were badass market and branders. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they marketed and branded their shit. Like those, I don't even know if Mothership's even a company anymore, but they were huge and they were killing it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
wholesale, even their pipes were thousands of dollars. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
because they were really good at marketing and branding, or you know, I see the same thing actually happen in cannabis too. Like, you know, with certain seed companies. And a lot of times it's because like, you know, I've got this rapper, you know, rapping
Yeah.
about my seeds or
Right.
smoking my shit on video or stuff like
Yeah.
that. And, you know, and all the kids want that. To me, it's like especially like the Mothership thing, it's kind of like owning a Rolex. Like it's not any
Yeah.
better than a Timex, but you're like, bro, I got a Rolex.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like you're a pimp,
Right.
you're a badass. You know, like to me, I wouldn't wear a Rolex if you gave it to me. I'd be embarrassed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Right.
with the younger crowd, that shit's important, and you know, I'm sure a lot of them grow out of it and stuff like that. But that's part of being young too. When I was a kid,
Yeah.
I wanted the cool stuff too. You know,
Well,
I grew up
it's
poor in the project, so I ain't never got no pair of Nikes. You know?
Yeah. Well,
I
the
got
collector
tracks.
the collector culture is so interesting. I mean, JR and we see that where folks in the community, they get really into it, and they have all these cookie packs or whatever, big brand, and it's kind of like a form of flexing of like, oh, I've got these
Yeah.
different strains. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's not my thing, but yeah, it's just
Yeah.
it appeals to certain mentalities or whatever.
Yeah. In any aspect in life, I'm all about the craft, you know,
Yeah.
like beer. I'd rather have a craft beer than a Budweiser any
Than a
day.
big name or
You know,
whatever.
Yeah.
I'd rather have
Totally.
a badass pipe made by some individual dude than some big company with some fancy name on it, even if it's just as good or even better. You know what I mean? Same thing with seeds or, you know,
Well, that's a
anything
good
really.
transition for us, Jinx, because we want to talk about a badass dude in a glass blower that is a legend to our scene, and that's Bob Snodgrass. Can you talk about what your relationship to him was and what he meant to you as an artist?
Uh-huh. You know, Bob is he's considered a pioneer in the industry. Most people love him. He's kind of like the grandpa of the glass blowers. You know what I mean? Most people say or think that he invented fuming, which is color changing pipes. And he's told this story a few times how he actually figured it out on accident, you know, because back before you could buy a bunch of colors, sometimes like fuming is done by silver or gold. You take a pure piece of silver or a pure piece of gold and you break it up in little pieces and you take a hot rod of glass and you pick it up. Then when you put it in the flame, it gathers up like a ball of mercury and it's now liquid and the flame is pushing that forward onto the glass. So when you see blue, it means somebody used a piece of silver. When you see those pinks and purples, it means they used gold, and you can also do them together to make, you know, to combine different colors. You can trap them, like if you did the fuming and then put some like clear dots on there, you can trap it under those dots, you know what I mean? And like these cool color change, like when you hear the expression color changing pipes, that's from that. And supposedly Bob was mixing up some like color rod and was doing a little silver or something, then like a little piece of silver fumed a piece of clear glass he had sitting there, you know what I mean? And then he was like, whoa, check this out, you know. I mean, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that's the legend, you know.
Right,
and you know, he's famous for his he does these big skull marbles with a skull, like a fumed skull right inside. I actually have one. If I'd have known we were talking about it, I'd have went and grabbed it and brought it down to show you guys. He gave it to me as a gift. I used to put on charity shows. Subcool and I actually put on 2 shows we called the School of Dank. And basically you bought a ticket and Sub would teach you just about everything he knew about growing, but we'd have other people there too, like Dioxide, his old partner, Odie Diesel, you know, all these guys that were, you know, big name, not even necessarily big names, but, you know, badass dudes. And so we'd have this 2-day school and all the profits from that show would go to help autistic kids. And every time I've done any kind of show, I'd call Bob up and ask him, hey man, will you come blow glass? Because it's also going to bring people in just to see that. People that don't even grow weed, you know, come see Bob blow glass live. And he would do it like on our breaks or, you know, like, you know, when the show was over or, you know, stuff like that. And every single time I call him, he's like, tell me when and where, you know, and give him a little gas money to get his old V-Dub bus up there. But he didn't want it, you know. A lot of people, if I'd have hit him up, you know, they'd want a couple $1,000s or this or that. And, you know, he always showed up and, you know, did his thing and, you know, helped us raise money for the kids. And through that, we became really good friends. You know what I mean? So he's a funny old dude. You know, he's definitely old school deadhead guy. And, you know, he's got a little Volkswagen van that he travels around in and blows glass in like at festivals and,
That's cool.
stuff like that. So he's
very
a funny
free.
guy.
And the one thing that we always like, the reputation was that, you know, he could drop one on the concrete or smash it on the ground and it wouldn't break. Why was he able to get glass so hard like that? I mean,
well, when I was talking about earlier, when you start with a tube of glass, so you melt that down, and the farther you melt it, the thicker it's going to get. You know what I'm saying? So this tube that was this big, that was that thick, is now this big, but that thick. You know what I mean? So it's called reducing the glass. You reduce that, and you know that's usually how you make a really thick pipe. You know, some of that is just rumors and stuff. Like, you know, sometimes a super thick pipe, if you threw it on the ground, it would break even easier because it's so burly. You know, you know. So and you know, there used to be these guys at Hempfest, and they'd have a little board set up under a piece of cloth, and they would bounce their pipes all day. You know, check this out. And I was always like, don't do that, because not to them, but you know, like a glass has a memory. Like you can drop glass, like a glass pipe, and it not break, but you've created a stress fracture in it that you can't see. Like all the elements have come out of line now from strength, and you might like go to tap a bowl one day and thing breaks in half. You know what I mean? So, you know, like a lot of that's just rumors. I've never seen him throw a pipe on the ground or anything like that, but he did understand the whole reduction, making a nice thick pipe. And there's also quality of glass. You know, you can buy borosilicate from China, you know, which it's terrible. It's really hard to work with, but it's super cheap. You know what I mean? Like most people use glass from either Germany or Czechoslovakia, which I only use shot, SCHOTT, you know, like shot, but it's a German word. The Germans, you know, they make the best glass. Then after that, it's like Eigenschaft, which is, I believe, from the Czech Republic, stuff like that. So that's a big difference too, using quality glass. So
Interesting.
That is very interesting because I mean, when you go into the shop and you get a piece, there's either the guy who goes in for, just like you said, the $30 functional piece, or there's the guy who goes in for art. And from I've kind of come at it from both perspectives, and the art side of it and the collecting side of it really can be endless.
Oh yeah.
And and I would like to talk about just being selling glass. Like, you would be at a lot of the hemp stocks and hemp fests, and I got some hemp fest on love for you today. Can you talk about that festival and what it was like to be able to be a part of that?
Yeah, we did it 16 or 17 years in a row, and it
That's
was funny
amazing.
because we would take our whole, this was way before I sold seeds or anything like that. It was just glass. But Rose and I, because our stores were always very small, like they'd be packed, but they'd be small so that we didn't have to pay a lot of rent. These little hole in the walls, we just pack them, you know what I mean? So that we could actually afford the building. And we would literally get like a U-Haul truck and take our whole store down there, like glass cases and everything. Like, we'd literally set our store up down there for the weekend. And back in the day, there wasn't stuff like that. So you could kill it. Like, we might make more that weekend than we make all year, just slaying it.
Yeah.
And it was funny because we would tarp our booth up, because to take all that shit home, like wrap all them pipes back up, take them back, and then come back the next day, like it's so much work, or you're going to lose half your pipes to breakage. So we would tarp our whole booth up, and then I would pay one of our employees to sleep there at night, which you can't do. It's illegal to sleep in a park. But our friend was the head of security for Hempfest. So he's like, it's cool, but just make sure that dude is in there quiet and sleeping. Like, if anybody comes in the booth, obviously sit up and be like, get out of here, bro. You know what I mean? Because there are a lot of thieves there, unfortunately. But even, because Hempfest was also run off volunteers. And so it wasn't like employees they trust. There was just these people that show up and you don't know who they are. So he was like, just as long as they're not in there partying, dude to bring his phone and, watch TV on his phone or then fall asleep, so we didn't have to, because the first year we did that, we went down there, unpacked everything, unwrapped, because it's all got to be bubble wrapped, not break it, wrap it back up, take it home, come back the next day, unwrap. I mean, it was more work, it was beyond reasonable, you know what I mean? So we started doing that. And we enjoyed it. We did it for quite some years. Then when COVID came, by then we had shut down our head shops, and I wasn't barely blowing glass because I became epileptic. And glass isn't the healthiest job or sport in the world. You know what I mean? Like, say, vaporizing silver and gold is not healthy. Of course, you got these big fat fans, but especially on a lathe, because it's sitting there spinning in your face. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of stuff in glass like lead, cadmium, all kinds of stuff that is not healthy. So I backed off the whole glass blowing thing. And when you go to Hempfest, when you rent a booth, you have the right to reserve it the next year. So you kind of work your way up to the good booths. Like, okay, homie didn't show up, isn't coming this year. Do you want to rent this booth? So we worked ourselves up in probably the best couple booths there. We had 2 booths side by side. And then I wasn't blowing glass anymore, and they wouldn't let you sell seeds there. We did a couple years kind of on the down low, blah, blah. But we didn't want to get Hempfest in trouble. So we just kind of bowed out. And it's when COVID happened. So they went, and the Vivian McPeak, who's the creator of Hempfest, went and collected all the booth fees. And it's not cheap to be there. It's like $3,000 for a decent booth at Hempfest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And COVID happened, and homie disappeared and kept everybody's money, and nobody's like heard from him, because they sent out a mass email, y'all get a free booth next year. Well, obviously it's not going to happen next year because of COVID. And nobody ever got their money back either. There was people talking about civil suits and all this.
Whoa.
But so dude just dipped, and which is funny because I never liked the dude anyways. Like Sharon that worked for Hempfest, she's a good woman and we're friends and stuff. But that Vivian McPeak guy always kind of I don't know, just like my instincts and stuff. Just I never
Right.
cared for him. He just kind of rubbed me the wrong way, And then, like I say, it's probably a couple $100,000 in boosts, because Hempfest is a mile long. You know
Yeah,
what
it
I mean?
is.
A
Yeah, it is.
mile long with nothing
Yeah.
but just badass boosts. They are not
Yeah.
cheap. You know what I mean? So yeah, dudes.
One thing I will say that was really great about it was the accessibility for handicapped people. It
Yes.
was very handicap accessible the
Mhm.
years that I went.
It was also all ages. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would go
And it
to
was a free speech event.
yeah, there was you're technically not supposed to smoke weed there. People do, but be cool about it. You know what I mean? Like if you
Right.
got a ticket at Hempfest, chances are you deserved it. Like you're sitting on a picnic table with a 6-foot bong and a bunch of 14-year-olds around you.
Right.
At the time it wasn't even legal, what I mean, to smoke
Sure.
weed. So like shit,
Yeah.
chances are if you got a ticket, you're going out of your way to get it. But one of my favorite parts was all the kids. Um, I would go out and I'd get on this website and I would buy these sleeves that go up your arm. And it's a pantyhose, but it makes it look like you're got a tattoo sleeve.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anytime kids came by, I'm like, hey, come here, or if they're with their parents, and I'd sleeve them up with these tattoos, and the
Oh,
kids
how
just
cool is that?
when you're a little kid, like your brain is so different. Like you're like, these people think I'm tattooed up. I'm
Yeah,
six.
yeah.
I would just sleeve them all day long. That was my favorite part of Hempfest. Obviously we're down there to make some money and meet people in person, and have a good
Yeah.
time. But that was actually my favorite part. It was so funny. And I'd post pictures of it and stuff, and it was a good time. So
So,
Yeah. It was a,
oh, sorry, JR.
go ahead, Q.
So I was gonna let's before we kind of close things out, we wanted to talk a little bit more about Bob Snodgrass.
sure.
So could you tell us about his legacy, and then I hear that you were able to create some sort of project to do with in his honor. So could you talk about that as well?
Yeah. There's a store in Seattle, Seattle Glass, and they're actually a soft glass place, but they started selling borosilicate because so many pipe makers had started in Seattle or even moved to Seattle, because like Oregon, it's a glass blowing mecca. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the soft glass place started selling borosilicate. So you could just roll in there instead of ordering it through the mail or whatever. And I talked them into doing a show, and we called it a Evening of Boro. So it was the evening of borosilicate, basically. And we would do a live glass blowing. It was a party. It was, just all kinds of stuff. Rose is doing something in the background, causing all kind of noise. I don't know if that's coming through the microphone. But so we'd done that a couple years, and I invited Bob. And of course, he showed up, and a lot of people showed up because he was there. And then as I learned more about his legend and this and that, I approached those guys and I was like, hey, for the next show, let's do a Bob Snodgrass Lifetime Achievement Award. Because the dude deserves it. He's the pioneer. He's the OG of making glass pipes. You know what I mean? And so me and Portal, who I was talking about earlier, we bought a rod of glass that big and we chucked it up in my lathe and turned on the torch and just let it spin. It took forever to get it hot because I mean it was that big.
Wow.
So and then every time it got hot, I would scoot my lathe forward until after a while we had this bowling ball of glass, literally.
Wow.
And then a Poly Portal has got mad skills, not just in blowing glass, but doing what's called faceting and cutting. So he took that giant ball and he cut it into a huge facet, which is basically a diamond,
Right.
So it was this big flat on top like that, and then like that. And at the time I had all the badasses, Amber Pellegrini, Brian Dosher, Big Max, like dudes that were badasses at the time. And they each made like a little, like a badass marble or something like that. And Amber Pellegrini, her shit is sculpting. So she made a little sculpture of Bob, like his head with his glasses on, his glass blowing glasses, his little beard.
Yeah.
And so on each part of the diamond that was flat, me and Portal welded those things on that the people had made. And then we took that and we put it on a flat piece of glass and engraved it, like Lifetime Achievement Award, Bob Snodgrass with the date. And then Polly made I was called Polly Portal, made a bubbler, but it was solid glass. like it was a sculpture of a bubbler. You know, it
Oh,
wasn't, you
okay.
couldn't use it. It was a solid glass, and we welded that to the top. And it was sick. You know, I mean, he's Bob, of course, still got it. He won't even like take it out. Like, can I get a picture of that? Well, I don't know, bro. You know, he covets it, you know what I mean? But it was really cool. And you know, I presented it to him at this party, which he didn't know it was coming. It was like a surprise kind of thing. And, you know, there was like, say, half these kids, you know, Bob's a grandpa to them, you know, and
Yeah.
this thing, like there's all kind of people like dabbing their eyes. I'm pretty sure Bob got a little salty himself. And, you know, it was a really cool thing. And it was a lot of fun. And, you know,
Yeah.
yeah. So.
Well, before we go, I would love to hear what you're up to these days, because it's been a while since I've seen you and chatted with you. So I'd love to hear, just kind of catch me up. What is Jinxproof up to? What if people if people have been vibing with this interview, what should they look up and find you? How can they support you?
Yeah, we actually just moved, so life has been crazy for us. We've been renting the same house forever. A lot of my old school followers know, like I had the little young ladies positive affirmation club, which was really sad for me because having to move, I had to leave a lot of those kids behind. And these, you know, I've raised a lot of these kids. A lot of them, the reason we started the club was because they were from single mothers and didn't have dads. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that was really hard for me to move out of the neighborhood. But Seattle has gone crazy as far as the economy, and the house we were renting is now worth like twice what we're renting it for. But in Seattle, there's a law that you can't raise rent over 10% without justifying it. So basically, our landlords came and said, "Oh, we're going to rebuild the house. You have to move out."
Yeah.
It was their way of kicking us out legally. So we
Yeah.
had to move. So life's been crazy moving, you know, all my glass blowing stuff, you know, my grow stuff, you know.
What a nightmare, eh?
It was super hard to even find a house. You know, we'd go to an open house to rent, and there'd be 10 other families there, and they'd be, you know, Microsoft execs. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
here we are, this total tattooed
Right.
rebel looking, you know, but we finally found a place and we like it. So a lot of what I've been doing has been kind of put on hold. So I did
Yeah.
finally get my grow set back up, and we got some new stuff we're working on, and, you know, trying to not fall too far behind as far as keeping our inventory up and breeding and
Cool.
stuff like that, you know. So I travel when I can. You know, the shows aren't the same as they used to be, so it's, you know,
No.
it's hard to do because they're very expensive. And, you know, we were talking earlier, you know, we went to what was supposed to be a show, you know, it was thousands and thousands of dollars to go to it, and like 300 people showed up, you know what I mean? Like, you know, I don't focus on shows making money, but I at least like to break even, you know what I mean? Pay for my ticket, my hotel,
Sure.
you know, because it's good PR, and I love meeting, you know, there's people that, you know, I've known on Instagram for 10 years and I've never met them in person, you know, and
Right.
a lot of times you get to do that. And, you know, I feel like they're old friends I have, but we've never actually got to shake hands or hug or whatever. So that's a huge part of the shows for me too, that I really enjoy. And, you know, and we try to raise money for the kids there too. So, but yeah, yeah, it's been a little crazy, you know,
I hear
so.
you. Well, so if people want to grab some of your seeds and stuff, where should they go? And are there any strain names that you could shout out that people could take a look at, that you think they should take a look at?
Sure. Our website is jinxproofsdankbank.com. The easiest way to find it is on Instagram. I'm Jinxproof 2.0. You know, I used to have a pretty big account of, like a lot of the cannabis people, it got canceled. So I lost 100,000 followers. So
Yeah.
if you can find my, there's a lot of fake Jinxproof accounts too. So be careful. It's Jinxproof 2.0. But in my bio, there's a link to the website. That's probably the easiest, quickest way to get there. You know, and there's
Cool.
also there's a link tree that takes you to our charity account or anything else that we're involved with. You know, so that's usually the easiest way. Find the
Awesome.
website, or just go to our Instagram and go to the link tree in my bio, and you can go there. And Rose always has some kind of deal going on, whether it's a BOGO or a, you know, sometimes we have test packs that we haven't released, and if you buy something, you get that test pack for free. So she's always hooking it up. Recently, she doubled our packs too. So instead of 6 seeds, you now get 12 for $60 instead of
That's a good
6 for
deal.
$50, which is we're still cheaper than most seed companies I see. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
for sure.
Especially now that we've doubled our packs. So that's usually the best thing to do. We've come out with some new stuff here. Rose had to make me some notes because
Oh,
since I
good.
since I
Oh,
started having seizures from that epilepsy, it's really messed my memory up. So I gotta have notes. I'm like, I don't know. So we have a new one called Dank Side of the Moon, and it's our morning vibes times Hell on Wheels, which if you go to the website and look at Hell on Wheels, it's just a frost monster, you
Yeah,
know.
it
So
is.
we got a new one called Mille Fiore, which in Italian means 1,000 flowers. And back to the glass blowing thing, there's things you buy called millis. They're actually called millefiores. And like when you're looking at a bong or a pipe and you see a little teeny flower, it's a glass flower inside a marble,
Yeah.
but it's like perfect. That's actually a millefiore. You make a big one by putting a bunch of colored rods together, and then you get it super hot and you pull it out all long and thin. So you can, you stick it to the glass and you break it off and it leaves that little flower there. So that's where the name for Millefiore came. It's a glass blowing inspired name, and it means a
Oh, cool.
thousand flowers, which obviously the flower part makes sense, So
yeah.
and that one is a main squeeze times 9-pound hammer. We got a new one called Pink Apple Punch, which is Sunday Driver times our hash gooberry. And that one, the first time I did a test smoke on it when I was a kid, my grandma used to make this juice out of apples and pomegranates, and she called it Pink Apple Punch. And first time I smoked it, it just totally made me think of that, like the flavor and stuff. So it was a grandma inspired name,
I love it.
We got a new one called Hash Cake, which is ice cream cake times our hash gooberry.
Ooh,
And
wow.
yeah, our hash gooberry we recently tested. It came out at 29% with some folks we work with out in Spokane. We got some new strains we're testing, which all the males were It's Fire 9-pound hammer hash gooberry. A lot of times on the test strains, I don't announce the full pedigree because
Yeah.
sometimes they don't pass test. If it's not stable or if it's not chronic, then I can it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't like to announce it because then people be asking me for it, and I'm like, well, actually, I had to throw it away because I didn't like it.
Yeah.
So
Do you sorry to jump in, do you periodically release the 9-pound hammer, or do you still have that? Because I know that's such a legendary strain that people just know that by name. I'm curious how you approach that. Sorry to throw that random question in there, but I was just curious
no,
about
it's
it.
all good. I always have 9-pound hammer, and I'm
Yeah.
always rebreeding it. We did F2 it some time ago. Just to, not that I had problems, but it's nice to do that, and it can make it more stable, and different reasons for that. But it's I can't imagine not ever having it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do limited editions, and like say I'm breeding 9-pound hammer, I might throw one or two plants in there. They still have to pass tests, but once they pass test, like we sell it, and then like we don't rebreed it again. It's
Yeah.
especially for a lot
One-offs.
of seed
Yeah.
breeders are collectors, kind of like baseball
Oh
cards.
yeah, totally.
I'm
Yeah,
guilty myself.
absolutely.
I got the drawer of seeds that aren't mine. I'll
Yeah.
never be able to grow or plant them. Like,
Yeah.
it'd take me 20 years, but I just, when I'm at a show, especially, I like supporting the other seed companies. And sometimes I just can't help it. Like I say, like, oh, dude's got the Babe Ruth, you know what I mean? I got to get
Right.
that
Yeah, I know.
baseball
I'm the
card, you
same
know what I
way.
mean? Or, so
Yeah.
I try to, there's a lot of, competition and stuff in this industry, and I try not to do that. So I try, like I buy seeds from other companies, whether they're big companies or little companies, and just kind of keep it cool between us. And like I say, it's fun collecting them too.
For
So
sure.
Yeah, I broke down and gave Q half of my collection to give
oh,
away. We give away a pack of seeds every
uh-huh.
episode, and we'll
Nice,
probably be at it for a while.
nice. Yeah, we give away a ton of seeds too. Anytime I'm at a show, for years, if you walked up to the booth and looked at me and said, "Be
Be
positive,"
positive.
and I gave you a free
Yeah,
pack of seeds. Like it's
yeah,
usually something that was dedicated just to that. Like we have one
yep.
called Sativa Scream, and you
I got
can't
that.
buy it. Only way
I
you
know. I
got
still
that
have it. It's
was
that's one of the ones that didn't go to Sam. I still have that in
yeah,
my book.
nice. Yeah, you can't buy that one, and you never will be able
No.
to. You know what I mean?
And
And
sativa is really good. Sativas are hard to come across,
well,
you
that
know.
one's cool because it was an open pollination. So we took a bunch of different sativas and used
Oh,
one
really?
male, and then we just mixed them all up.
Oh,
Who knows
wow.
what you're gonna get? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that's
So
crazy.
just
Yeah, and
something
Tom,
fun.
while you're at it, just go ahead and let people know about the free seats for vets when they come up to your booth.
Yes, always free seats for veterans at my booth. Some guys show up with their veteran cards and stuff, and I appreciate that, but I don't actually check. Like
Right, right.
if you got the
Yeah.
stupidity to come up to my booth and pretend you're a veteran to get some free seeds, and that's on you. That's some weight.
Right.
That's some weight you ain't gonna be able to carry forever, and that's your problem. So
Yeah,
because
right.
I don't like part of me I don't want to be disrespectful. Like, let me see that you're a vet. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
Right.
we've
right.
been doing that forever. We did one strain that was strictly for vets. One of the ones we were giving away. It was called 22 Mini because we work with 22 Mini, the soldier suicide prevention campaign, because
Yeah,
22
yeah, yeah.
soldiers a day commit suicide. So we named it 22 Mini, and that's one of the strains that we gave out to vets. It's gone now, but we always have something no matter what. There'll never be a show that I'll be at that veterans won't get free seeds. So, but
That's fantastic.
we recently changed the Be Positive thing. I took it to the next level. So you don't just walk up to my booth and say be positive. You have to come up with a handwritten positive self-affirmation.
Yep.
Oh,
And
that's
I've
Yeah.
been
cool.
saving, I've got stacks of them. I don't know what like someday I want to do something with them, like maybe make a paper mache. I don't know what, but someday I want to do something with them and make
Yeah.
something out of them. And you know what I mean? And it's really cool,
Well, there's a lot of intent. You know what I mean? There's a lot of meaning and intent by that
Oh,
stack of paper. So it
Yeah.
definitely.
holds, just in that little stack holds so
Yeah.
much. You know
Well,
what I
just the
mean?
exchange between the two people is really cool too.
Yeah.
Because some people
Yeah.
it's really hard for them,
Yeah.
especially if they have anxiety or stuff like that. Because I've had people tell me, like, bro, like they're almost tears, like, you don't know how hard this was for me to bring this to you, and and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And that means a lot to me. I always get out of my booth
Yeah.
and give them a big hug, or
Yeah.
it's the exchange of energies between each other is incredible, and it's really neat. You know what I mean?
It
So
would be cool, like a cool art project to have, like an Instagram account or something. Every week or day or whatever, you could post a picture of a new affirmation or something
uh-huh.
like that. That would be kind of
Yeah,
cool.
I got a bunch. I could post one every hour.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because I've been
yeah,
doing it for a while now, and some of the shows are big. And there's been shows where I've told people, because some people come up and they buy some seeds. I was like, "Hey man, aren't you on my Instagram?" They're like, "Yeah." I said, "You didn't see the thing this morning?" They're like, "Huh?" I tell them, "Well, if you write me a positive self affirmation, bring it to me. You get a free pack of seeds." And a lot of times I'll even have pieces of paper there with a pin,
yeah,
so they can
yeah,
do it right then and there. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's not completely exclusive.
yeah,
And I love doing it. Like I say, it's fun. I love giving stuff away, and like I say, that little energy exchange, but somebody writing something positive and giving it to you, is really neat.
yeah.
So it's cool.
Well, I noticed, JR, you had a question, because we're at the end of the show now, but I noticed JR had a question about your cannabis journey. So, JR, what was that one?
This is something I like to ask folks. So, Jinx, tell us one time you had a really shit your pants moment in your cannabis journey where you're like, oh shit, a real shit your pants moment.
It's kind of a hard question to understand at the same time. You know what I mean? Like an epiphany, or just something scary, or like just.
You choose.
I mean, the first thing I think of when you say that is the first time I ever did a dab. Because I'd heard, I didn't know what it was. I mean, I'd seen kids make, now that I'm 55, anybody like younger than me, I call a kid. The older you get, the
Right.
older the person you call a kid is. We gotta be 35, I'm calling them a kid. So
Yeah.
I don't mean actual kids. But some kid was like, "Bro, you want to do a dab?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's check this shit out." And like when I take a bong hit, like I'll take a fatty and clear it, snap it through in one hit. You know what I mean? Like I can take a fat bong hit. So I went at my dab like that.
Oh,
I did
yeah.
the fattest dab and just till it was stopped, blah, blah, blah. I was so damn high. I haven't been that high since I was a little kid. Like first time you smoked weed, I was like out of my mind high. Like I actually didn't like it. I was too high. You know what I mean? Which is not something you're gonna hear me say a lot, but you know, I was like, so that's one of the first things that comes to my mind when you say that is
That's funny.
the first time I did a dab, I was like, holy shit, I was in outer space, you know.
Right? Yeah, similar.
I've only dabbed twice, and you know, the second time was the same damn thing. I was just like, I'd rather take 100 bong hits than a dab. It's too much too quick for me. You know what I mean? It's like I like to, you know, climb the stairs, not just be at the top of the staircase instantly, you know.
Yeah, totally.
So you know,
good times.
Yeah,
right,
I mean, there have been other moments that were, you know, different things, you know, like emotional or, you know, things like that, you know, where I've got to meet certain people or I had a kid come to Hempfest, and he was a kid. He was with his parents. He's a little kid, and he came down there because his parents were Instagram followers and all that, and he came down to promise me that he would stop hitting himself in the face. You know, and it still kind of gets me a little bit. And it was just like, wow, that was fucking deep. You know what I mean? Because a lot of autistic kids hurt themselves.
Right,
you know?
right.
There's a video that goes around, and it's pro cannabis, and it's this little girl, and she's just flapping herself in the face, and her dad puts on a breathing mask with vaporized cannabis, and she just stops. You know, and she's cool, you know. So when that little kid, it was so like. You know, it was deep. You know, it was heavy. You know, so
that's very heavy.
I think that's a great reminder to us that cannabis is medical. You know, and because that's something I don't know. You just reminded me of, you know, the way that person was consuming cannabis. We need cannabis in all different forms, and all functions. Just reminded me of
and
that.
I know. Yeah, and I don't think there should be an age number on it. I think it's ridiculous that we say, "Oh, you got to be this number to get the benefits of what this plant has to offer." I think that's absolutely insane.
I mean, like me personally, like I don't want, like, you know, I have kids. They're grown up now, but when they were 8, I didn't want them walking around getting stoned or nothing. But if one of them had a serious condition, like, you know, Charlotte from Charlotte's Web, where you know, was having 300 seizures a month, and because of CBDs and stuff, you know, went down to a couple seizures a month. Like, by all means, you know, it's way overlooked. It's you know, it's always looked at as something kind of evil, but you know, there's big deep reasons for that too when it comes to money and pharmaceuticals and, you know, stuff like that, you know. So that's a whole nother rabbit hole.
Right.
I mean?
We just had a RSO podcast where we kind of touched on Rick Simpson and what RSO and full extract oil brings to the table, and we're going to keep continuing down that rabbit hole. And I want to thank you, Jinx, for your openness about your medical struggles, and also the openness about, you know, autism and what you deal with your family.
Sure.
And I just think that your example to our community has been rewarded with your longevity. I mean, you're one of the dudes that are still standing, bro.
Thanks,
and
man.
To be able to say that in this industry, it means a lot, because there's many folks, as you know, are not standing. So you know, good job to you, and it speaks a lot to who you are and the energy that you put out. And I always appreciate your time and your generosity. And like I said, I'm still a fanboy, Jinx. I'm still.
Oh, thanks, brother. I appreciate that.
Yeah, we really appreciate your time today, Jinx, on this Sunday afternoon. It really is great catching up with you and hearing from you. I met you at the Dude Grows Cup back in 2018, 2019.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
Yeah, so I always appreciate seeing you and hearing from you, and like JR said, the positive energy that you put out into the universe. You and your wife both, actually. Shout out to Rose.
She doesn't get the credit she deserves.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, like she's one hard-working woman, and like makes most of this shit happen. Like I always joke, like I'm the body of the car, but Rose is the Hemi under the hood. You know, like people don't even know, you know, what, you know, endless, you know, from the seeds to the charities to helping people to filling orders. Like she's the one that makes it all happen. Like without her, y'all would hate Jinxproof. I paid for my seeds 9 months ago. You know,
I hear
she's
you.
on it.
I hear you.
I'm a lucky motherfucker. Let's put it. Let's be honest. You know.
That's awesome, man. Well, JR, were there any last questions, or are we good to go?
No, that's it, my friend. I want to thank you again for coming on, buddy, and I can't wait to see you soon.
There was one thing I did want to touch on real quick,
Oh,
Sure.
yes, that is right.
and that's I've been trying to get a little mini campaign of getting people to learn CPR. It's something you can learn in a matter of minutes. You can learn it on YouTube. You know, I've personally had Rose had to give me CPR first time I had my seizure. My first seizure being epileptic. My face was blue, my tongue was blue, my hands were blue, and luckily Rose knew how to do CPR because I was gasping. I was I wasn't
Yeah.
breathing. Rose rolled my dumb ass over and gave me CPR, and the ambulance, the fire guys were all like, "If she wasn't home, you'd be dead. You'd have suffocated to death, or even worse, you'd have brain damage from
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
breathing for so long."
Yeah.
Recently, Rose and I were at a park, and this 1-year-old girl, a friend of ours, she's got a lot of issues. In 1 year, she's had 8 major seizures. I mean, surgeries, and it was her birthday 1 year, and she started having a seizure, which she's never had. And same thing, like nobody knew what to do. There's a ton of
Yeah.
people, everybody's panicking. So I looked at Rose, I said, call 911. Because one thing in an emergency is you never yell, call 911, you assign it. Like Joe, Susie, whatever. Call 911, you assign it. You know what I mean? Because the 30 seconds of everybody deciding who's calling could be life or death. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I've never done CPR. I know how to do it. This girl's lips were turning blue, her fingers were turning blue, and Rose is on the phone. And I was like, "Fuck, it's time for me to give her CPR, isn't it?" And she looked at me and shook her head. I rolled her over, gave her 3 good CPR breaths, and her fucking eyes rolled back down because her eyes were white, and she started screaming, crying, which is great because you can't cry if you can't breathe.
Breathe. Yeah.
And like I say, all these people, it was a big old birthday party, all these people, and nobody knew how to do CPR. And it was,
Wow.
as kind as I can say it was ridiculous. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm kind of on a campaign. Anybody watching this, take 30 seconds, go to YouTube or Google it, whatever, and learn CPR. It's easy. It's
Yeah.
easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It wasn't that big a deal, and like I say, just it might have killed her. Like I said, her eyes were up in her head. When your
Yeah.
fingers are blue, you haven't taken a breath in a long time. You know what I mean? It could
Yeah.
have caused her brain damage, and she's actually fine. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And I'm so grateful that who or whatever put us there at the right place. So,
Yeah.
like I say, I'm giving a shout out to everybody that sees this. Please just take a moment and like I said, YouTube's probably the easiest way, and learn CPR. You might save a stranger's life. Like I said, Rose saved my life with CPR. I would have suffocated to either death or to the point of brain damage.
Right.
And that would suck.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
dad. I can't leave these kids behind.
Yeah. And many of
Yeah, I
those
hear you.
situations, what is it like those golden minutes that you have?
Yeah.
Or you start doing that irreversible damage that starts happening.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's very powerful. And yeah, thanks a lot for mentioning that. I kind of wanted to mention that and I dropped the ball. Thanks.
It's all good. It's all
Thanks,
good. Yeah.
Jinx.
Thanks for giving the platform to mention it on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate you a lot, Jinx. I
I
really
appreciate
do.
you guys too. I always enjoy your company and seeing you guys, and
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing you in person again or back on a show or
For sure.
whatever's going down. So you guys are awesome. I truly do appreciate it. And Miss Rose is up there, but she told me to say hi to you guys too.
Hi, Miss
Well,
Rose.
we'll let you go, but as always, JR, we've got to sign off for the day. And but we had a great time with you, Jinx. We hope you have a great rest of your day. And thanks everyone for watching. But until the next one, growers love.
Growers love.